አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ ጊዜያዊ ጥቅምን አምቢኝ ብለው የዘመመን ሊያቀና እውነትና እውቀትን አስከትሎ ኢኮኖሚያዊና መንፈሳዊ መረጃዎችን እንካችሁ ይላል። ትኩስ ዜናዎች፣ ዘጋቢ ፊልሞች፣ ጥልቅ ትንታኔዎች በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ይቀርባሉ። ራእያችን ጊዜውን ያማከለና ዘመኑን የዋጀ በእውነት የነጠሩ መረጃዎችን በእውቀት ደግፎ ለሀገራችን ብሎም ለዓለም ሕዝብ ማዳረስ ነው። አድሬሳችን አደባባይ ኢንፎ ሚዲያ @gmail.com፣ ዌብሳይታችን www.adebabai.com። ያግኙን፣ ይርዱን። የሁላችንም ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን። አደባባይ ሚዲያ።
Welcome everyone from around the world to our Sunday Viewers Digest Adebabay Media English program. Thank you for joining us today. Today we have yet another special program for you. We will be discussing about current events in Ethiopia, focusing on ethnic-based federalism versus practical federalism. We have two special guests for you today. Please stay tuned. Don't forget to like and share our program. We'll be right back. Please help us with sharing and liking and sharing this program. We'll be right back after this short ad. Following a brutal, bloody civil war to topple the Derg regime, the new TPLF regime that captured Adebabay ratified a new constitution in August of 1995. This constitution made for one-party dominance not only gave the TPLF the upper hand of power, but it left the Republic of Ethiopia with more than 80 ethnicities divided based on 9 ethnicity lines, but only giving 4 ethnicities to join the federal government. But the consequence of this unconventional ethnic-based system did not stop its troubles there. For the last 30 years, in sequence of events, the once regarded as a beauty of the nation that spoke more than 80 languages with rich various languages and ethnicities became the reason of its chaos. And for 3 decades of our division was preached more than what unified us. The new generation was forced into believing he or she belonged to one ethnicity, one ethnic group. The political parties were based on ethnicity lines that claimed inadequate land. Patriotism was replaced by nationalism. False and toxic rumors were spread and taught as history that left one language speaking Ethiopians against the other. From the village of Arbagugu 30 years ago to Maya Kadra today in 2020, in sequence of events, thousands of innocent lives were brutally murdered, hundreds of churches burned, priests and deacons slaughtered while leading a worship, Orthodox parishioners burned alive, forced into displacement. From splitting the church to undermining its citizens, the regime that made Orthodoxy and ethnic Amara its enemy horrifically unleashed its terror on Ethiopians while the whole world washed in silence. Yesterday, November 28, 2020, after 30 years of terror, this group was brought to justice. The war on terror seems to be victorious. But will peace prevail in Ethiopia? How do we move forward from this dark era as a nation united? These are some of the questions that we will be answering and trying to answer and reason out with our guest today. We are blessed to have 2 guests today, Lik Abrahanat Nehemiah, father and church minister at Debragannet Medhanialam in Maryland. And we also have deacon brother Diakon Elias, also a church youth ministry in Dingil Mariam Church in Los Angeles. These are not our guests. Zare Mejammariyacho አይደለም. They've been with us many times. Welcome, father and brother.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Iftuኝ ባርኩኝ ሊቀ ብርሃናት. The first thing I wanted to mention, like I kind of tried to say in my introduction, we're going to try to focus on now post what just happened inspired in November 28 or yesterday, post TPLF. The sequence of events or the problem seems to be the cycle of the constitution that we've been having for the past 30 years, or that system we call ethnic federalism. So what do we mean by when we say federalism and ethnic federalism? What is the difference? Like, for example, in the United States, it's a federal system, and we have a lot of successful nations that are well developed that uses federalism. But when we say ethnic federalism, what do we mean?
So federalism is definitely an idea that was popularized by the United States, as you mentioned, but it has roots, in the Iroquois nation, which is one of the many Native American tribes. It has roots all over the world. I would even point to Switzerland as kind of a successful example of ethnic federalism. But federalism, as you mentioned, by itself has nothing to do with ethnicity and has everything to do with region. It has to do with when a larger country gives a limited amount of power to a federal government, usually stuff that involves dealing with other foreign sovereign nations, and then devolves the rest of power to the local level, to whether it's called cantons, district, state, whatever you call your local region. Killil is the language used since 1991 in Ethiopia. And ethnic federalism is the idea that you do that based off ethnicity. Ethnicity could mean culture, ethnicity could mean language, ethnicity could mean religion, or ethnicity could be tied with biology, meaning one's blood. And I guess part of the issue a lot of people have had in the Ethiopian context is that the form of ethnic federalism was based off of linguistics, off of language, and it was imposed upon a lot of people. For one small example, I know in the news, the TPLF has been in the news. The Tigray region, if you look at it during the monarchical era, the communist era, and the current era, the difference is that a huge swath of land west of the Takaze River that used to be a part of Gondar, which is now the Amhara region, was put into the Tigray region to the northwest. And to the south, where it borders Wallo, areas from Wallo were taken and given near the Raya area. So I think a lot of people that had issue, some of it was with the idea of ethnic federalism at all, which is a valid argument to have. But another group of people are even okay with ethnic federalism, but don't like the way in which the lands were distributed in the early 90s.
So do you guys, and Lika Branat, you could jump in this as well. Do you agree that the core problem, or what is the core problem of the past 30 years, or even if we could look at the past 3 years after we've all at least agreed that there was a kind of change in government, can we say that the system itself is a problem, or is it another African bad leadership?
Well, I mean, we can say both of it, because it has some element of leadership and some element of the theory that ethnic federalism has brought into the life of Ethiopia. One of the things that ethnic federalism brings is that Ethiopia, as you all know, historically, it is a nation's state. It's not a state of a nation, but it's hizboch agar nat. So that by itself symbolize the unity, the wisdom, the culture, the diverse culture mingling and in living together have brought so many power and so many integration for the fulfillment of the population and in the nation. So by dividing people based on their ethnicity, um, it has brought that the negative insight of that you or he or whomever that we identify ethnically better than the other or lesser than the other. When we discuss about the ethnic federalism in Ethiopia, the negativity or the non-identical power that people think that they are entitled to because of their belongingness of their ethnic group has brought the idea that humanity is not the core value to live in a state which we call Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a country of every nation, as you all know. 80 around 80 ethnic groups are living in Ethiopia. And so when we are talking about ethnic federalism, which gives the power to divide the places based on their ethnicity, the country or the state that we know, Ethiopia, will be abolished or will not be in the history. So it has so much negative impact in the life of the people, and of course, it narrows where God, brought into our spirit, so that we can, with our differences, we can live together. That the idea of even though the Bible doesn't focus on or doesn't teach multiculturalism, but it always tells us to live and to love our neighbors based on their humanity, not based on who they are ethnically. As we live here in America, in the US, we have so many diverse population, but we still live with our differences to maintain what humanity should look like and how can we strive forward. And after saying that, I really, really want to focus on that my heart goes into to our people. When I say our people, the Ethiopian people that are going through this egregious time for the love of freedom of religion and freedom of who they are. And that should have never been a question. But what this ethnic federalism have brought into our country that we know and we love and we cherish, even be proud, is really dangerous. So I'm happy at the same time that came into a conclusion that we can go further with our choices, how politically, religiously, even socially, to integrate and live with each other with respect to who we are, not where we belong or which territory we should cross over.
With that said, and I'll let Diakon Hinok jump in this as well, and you could also go back and answer the same thing. But with that said, if we have figured out that yes, this ethnic-based federalism or system, even though, by the way, in irony, even though they say that it's it divides, or this federalism is supposed to work for all ethnicity, it hasn't. We have 80, and we only have 9 lands given for 8 of them given for one each ethnicity, and then the other 70 plus ethnicities all conjoined together and only given one region. So even with that system, it doesn't work. But overall, there's a lot of discussion and talks moving forward. Even before even while TPLF was in power in the region, in Tigray region, has been a lot of talk that in order for us to move forward as a nation and exist as a nation from now on, ethnic-based political parties should be banned. Do you agree or disagree? Should political is that the core problem, and should that be banned?
It's very interesting. To be honest, I can't say that I have 100% fully informed opinion either way. I know for sure why people say that it should be banned, because exactly like you said, it hasn't been working. The fact that it hasn't been working doesn't necessarily mean that there's no way that it can work, but certainly the way it's been has not been working, as you mentioned, especially for the most marginalized, the smallest number of people. So for example, in the United States, you have the House of Representatives, which is by population size. And to counterbalance that, you have senators. And the senators, no matter how big your state is, you have 2 senators. So, you know, perhaps if something like that were done for, I know you didn't mention them explicitly, but you're referring to the southern nations and peoples, where just because the reason that they're not given their own land, as you mentioned, is because their number or their population size is much smaller. So if there was some sort of means to counteract, like something based on population, whereas something just based on their humanity, as Cassis Nehemiah was mentioning earlier, that would be very interesting. But yeah, certainly, I would say certainly the question needs to be revisited and studied. And I mentioned this last time I came on this program, but I think part of what happened with the establishment of the new constitution, as you mentioned, is that really we went from one military junta, the communist one, to another that got rid of the explicit communist label, but frankly, probably still believed a lot of the same things and just kind of changed the optics of it. You know, we have that Amharic saying, fitu, and now they changed the feet. They changed the kind of the face or the presentation, but a lot of this stuff was still a small oligarchy making those decisions, as opposed to incorporating the local will of the people, the village elders, the likawant, the shemagle, whoever it would be, in a process where they get to decide a question like that. And I always, as I speak on these matters, want to mention what Cassis Nehemiah mentioned earlier. We're here living in the United States. So as much as possible, you know, we do what we can and we contribute to the conversation, but I always want to prioritize the voice of those as we can get to them with all the internet cancellations and everything in Ethiopia itself.
Exactly. One thing we could all agree, at least, it has not been working. None of us are lawyers, and we can't say based on the law that we can ban them politically, but something that we could see, let alone working, it's been a bloodshed. And even if like, one thing I would say on this topic is, for example, in the United States, Mitt Romney, the Senator Mitt Romney, was a governor of Massachusetts for, I don't know, for like the whole, I think he did both full terms, and he was known from being from Massachusetts. But now he resided to Utah after doing all the rightful process, going through the political process that he needs to be assigned. And Utah, now he's the senator. In Ethiopia, let alone doing that, you're not, like, you can live for 50 years, even 150 years in one land, and maybe you don't speak the language, or you're not supposedly, according to the system, not from that ethnic group. You can never, let alone become a governor. You can't even be a Kabyle leader. So that doesn't even work according to their own system. So it's that, I believe, even looking at it that way, one thing we could agree is it has not been working. What do you think, Brahanat?
I mean, one of the things that has failed us in our country when we speak about ethnic federalism, it gives every ethnic group, as we speaks, it gives the unconditional right of secession. And that was the negative, the most very unimaginable thing that has empowered so many people who are living together in any aspect of life, getting married, and playing soccer since childhood, whether you are the tribe that we mention in so many ways, and the north part of the population went down to south and living. It's really hard to separate those people, even though we give that ethnic power, ethnic group to have a government right to govern the state. We still have population in those states. As we know now, it's about 10. I think it was 9 regions, and those things has empowered so many of the ethnic group who claim that they belong to that state, have started, let's say, cleansing their territory. And in that, what we see now is there are so many genocide in Ethiopia. So the right to secede come from this ethnic federalism, which Ethiopia, by the way, when she become the emblem of freedom for the Black nation and for the world to be a symbolic freedom oriented country, which never been colonized. It's not based on their ethnic group. It's based on what Ethiopia stands for, which is inclusiveness and togetherness. Empowered the population to identify who they are, which is Ethiopia. Ethiopia not only become a country, it become freedom, it become culture, it become a religion for some of the population throughout the world. That by itself is a big thing. Look, when we are talking about this secession and everything, it doesn't come from only from our own people, but there are so many influences that don't want to see Ethiopia by itself succeed. Remember, we have embarrassed, let me claim this, we have embarrassed the colonizers by defeating them in 1935. So they will never sleep until they diminished, I would say, the Ethiopian society, which stands firm in unity, in prosperity, in religion, and even in inclusive togetherness. So it will break your heart even thinking that where we were born, what we know about Ethiopia is just going the way that it was not supposed to, by infiltrating this idea of ethnic federalism. As Deacon Henok have told us, United States started federalism in 1789, I think. So since then, they have been implementing this. But as you've said, you can be born in Minnesota and serve in the red state of Wyoming, because you are identified as an American, not because of your color or your ethnicity or your education background, but it is where you live matters. So now, in our case, by this ethnic federalism, we are implementing the only ethnic group can live in that region, and then the other has to be out of that. That doesn't sound, Ethiopianism, I would call it, because it is not how we brought up, or it is not how even Ethiopia was built upon, I would say.
I agree. Yeah, and thank you. And something just to add on this, when you said about Minnesota and then being able to govern anywhere as an American, like also said, there's a lot of divisions in the United States, as we know, like with politically, right?
Of course.
Especially when it comes to race. It's like as if sometimes we feel like, oh, the nation is completely being split. But at the end of the day, whether you're I don't want to equate white supremacy, but whether you're completely all for, you don't care about like what's going on to the African American community, or you care enough about the African American community. At the end, what unites these two Akan is they all pledge for the one flag of the United States of America, and they're all fighting for one, Americanism, or the Amerikawinnet. One thing that we've lost in the past 30 years, I believe, especially this generation, is being the lack of pride of saying that we are Ethiopiawinnet. That's what this ethnic federalism really almost completely almost vanished to our lives. Maybe the only reason that we have that a little bit of Ethiopiawinnet is because we learn it from the churches and the mosques and from our fathers, from the elders, and the culture. But when it comes to the politics and the way we're governed, that Ethiopiawinnet has been completely almost erased from our lives. So we could at least agree to that. But moving forward, Diakon Henok, what do we say to those when we talk about the how ethnic federalism is destroying the country? It's a bad thing. They equate it to saying that we are against ethnicities and we're trying to, as they say, going to move as ahadawinnet, or like trying to erase all other ethnicities and only adhere, maybe, as they say, either Amhara or just one ethnic group. What do you say to those brothers and sisters that have been fed this lie that that's not what we're saying?
It's a very difficult question to answer. Let me begin by referencing the United States, with both of you have mentioned. The thing about the United States is the United States does not have 82 languages. So one of the impolite truths that we have to discuss when we study the history and we look at all of these languages is that historically, Ge'ez and Amharic are the written languages. And really, for the most part, everything else was spoken. In the medieval period, you have the Adareoch using Gesinan, their language, Harari or Adarinya, and they would write it in the Arabic script. But really, until the 1800s, you don't have a lot of writings in Tigrinya. In Hamasen, you have the customary law written down, but you don't have a bunch of books in Tigrinya, nor in the Tigray region. You don't have a bunch of books written in Orominya. It's an oral history that is kept by their sages. So, to be honest, those things are in tension. Having a stable, unified country and preserving all the local traditions, we have to be honest and frank that there is a tension between those things. And then we have to ask ourselves, when Amharic was the official language and everyone in all the regions was learning in Amharic, how come all those other languages and cultures didn't disappear? And the truth is that there are a lot of cultural, traditional institutions that we need to look at and learn from. For example,
you'll answer this together. I just have a question. When you said the United States doesn't have 80 languages, but don't we, first of all, you get to become a citizen maybe after like 5 or 6 years after your process. It depends on your visa. But once you're a citizen, you're an American citizen. So in that case, there are, I don't know, like I don't want to just put out numbers, but more than 80 ethnic groups and languages in America that actually, if you have the majority, they even put you, like, for example, I don't know, DC, like Branat, you'll tell me, Amharic is recognized. I don't know if it's locally or as a statewide, but it's recognized, right?
It is. I mean, you can ask for translators, and there will be an Amharic alphabet written on buses and metros, I'm sure. Look, Henok, you may recall the governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was from Austria.
Yep.
He became an American, and he became the governor of California for 8 years. He was Republican, and he was not even asked what tribe he belongs to even lead about 33 million, if I'm not mistaken, more than 30 million people in California. So even the advantage is there, the opportunity is there. It doesn't matter where you come from or what tribe you belong.
Yeah.
Once you are an American, you are an American.
Yeah.
So for us, for those of us who are even born in Ethiopia, never been given the opportunity to live and to succeed with this Ethiopian, philosophy, or what Ethiopia should look like. It is fascinating. At the same time, it's amazing that people take away what you are as an Ethiopian to fulfill their political, interests.
Sorry, Dagon Henok, I don't want to cut you off, but
Go ahead, because
I just wanted to make that point. That do you think that it equates to? I mean, in America, if you're able to, of course, English, you'll have to speak English, and you'll have to grow in that. But the system lets you grow your own language. So in that case, it's still like it's recognized as much as you work with it. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I remember Governor Schwarzenegger well. He came and visited my school. I was startled to learn he wasn't that tall. I used to think he was huge growing up watching him in the movies. But he came, and my sister won the Duke of Edinburgh Award, and he was there to witness the Duke of Edinburgh coming to the United States. So I've seen him before, and I do remember that. How can you forget an actor becoming your governor? But yeah, Diakon Ephraim, to your point, what I'm saying is you don't go to DC like you see Inquan Danamatachu on the buses, but what you don't see is you don't see the entire District of Columbia or the entire state of Maryland, everything being run in Amariña, or everything being run in German, everything being run in French or in Chinese or in Tagalog or whatever it may be. And so what happens in the pseudo-linguistic ethnic federalism of Ethiopia is that whatever language is, learned, if you only learn in that language and you don't learn Amharic, it relegates you towards your Killil. So you can't get any jobs in the federal government because you're not going to have the skill set to have the one unifying common language. And so that was kind of the bigger point that I was making. So teaching people's local languages and customs on the side, but putting whatever is shared and the same together. That's what I was trying to point to.
Now I agree. Yeah. It's like, imagine if like Minnesota, only Mexicans gets to live in Minnesota. And then Wisconsin would be only black people. That's the way it's like they put it forth. Like the system in Ethiopia's placed right now is kind of like that. Not kind of like that, but exactly like that. Brothers and sisters, thank you for being with us here at Viewers Digest. We're having a great conversation with our father Lika Berhanat and Diakon Henok. We will be right back after a short break, but please don't forget to share and like, and especially share our conversation, comment, and ask your questions. We are looking at your comments. It's very important that you share it with others so you could be part of this conversation, because we are a very not only a consequential but a very important time of an event in our country, in our nation, and our beloved Ethiopia. So it's very important that we discuss these very important, crucial topics. But we need your help. We need you to be part of this conversation. Share and like. We'll be right back after this advertisement.
አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ ጊዜያዊ ጥቅምን አምቢኝ ብለው የዘመመን ሊያቀና እውነትና እውቀትን አስከትሎ ኢኮኖሚያዊና መንፈሳዊ መረጃዎችን እንካችሁ ይላል። ትኩስ ዜናዎች፣ ዘጋቢ ፊልሞች፣ ጥልቅ ትንታኔዎች በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ይቀርባሉ። ራእያችን ጊዜውን ያማከለና ዘመኑን የዋጀ በእውነት የነጠሩ መረጃዎችን በእውቀት ደግፎ ለሀገራችን ብሎም ለዓለም ሕዝብ ማዳረስ ነው። አድሬሳችን አደባባይ ኢንፎ ሚዲያ @gmail.com፣ ዌብሳይታችን www.adebabai.com። ያግኙን፣ ይርዱን። የሁላችንም ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን። አደባባይ ሚዲያ።
አደባባይ ሚዲያ የኔ ነው። አደባባይ ሚዲያ የኔም ነው። አደባባይ ሚዲያ የኔ ነው። አደባባይ ሚዲያ የሁላችንም ነው። የኛ ቤተሰብ አደባባይ ሚዲያን ይመለከታል። የእናንተስ? Do your parents watch አደባባይ ሚዲያ? Watch, follow, subscribe and help አደባባይ። አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ።
We are back, brothers and sisters. We are here with Lika Berhanat and our brother Diakon Henok, and we're talking about ethnic-based federalism versus federalism, practical federalism. and about current events in Ethiopia. Moving forward, one thing I wanted to ask about now, if we come back to our diaspora here in the United States, since the 3.5 week-long operation against TPLF, there have been a lot of heated discussions and debates on social media, even over the phone. It could be at home, could be with our brothers and sisters from all various ethnic backgrounds, especially with our Tagaru brothers and sisters. Speaking for myself, I've been actually reaching out to a lot of my brothers and sisters that have family in Mekelle, that have family in Tigray region, which myself, my cousin, by the way, lives with his wife and children in Wukro Mekelle, and we haven't heard from him yet. So there has been a lot of tension and a lot of stress because there is no goodness or happiness in any kind of war, especially when it comes to civil war. So my question is, post TPLF, how do we as fellow Ethiopians live in this in especially in the diaspora? How do we heal this division, especially with ethnic the ethnic divisions that we are seeing? And to add to that, most of the divisions, at least within what happened now, most of the division is between not only just there's this, of course, the Ethiopian that makes us one, but also for example, the Tigray region, we have 92% Orthodox. They are our brothers and sisters in Christ. So how do we, which will be the second segment, we'll talk about our church's part in that. But how have you been coping with this division, and how, Lika Branat, I want to start with you, with your children, and with the youth that you teach. How have you been doing it, and how should we do it in the future? Start the healing process.
Yeah. At first, we need to denounce those who seek to foster tensions, divisions, antagonism, and even bloodshed among the people of Ethiopia for their own political purposes. We need to always denounce those acts, because hate never brings love. Especially St. Paul, when he wrote the difficulty of ministry to his disciple Titus in chapter 3, around verses 3, about the decline of Christian virtues at the last day of the earth. He mentioned that people will be unlovable, unforgiving, and hateful. So as we call it in Ethiopia, in our own language, የመጨረሻው ቀን. So we are at that point that we see so much calamities towards Christians in everywhere, not only in the Tigray region. The numerous brutality and violent attacks against churches and communities, especially affecting the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, on the members of any community defined by religion or ethnicity, on churches and holy places, even civilians by armed groups. It should be denounced, and those who are responsible has to be brought into justice. At the same time, as the saying goes, evil never goes unpunished, right? So having said all of this, it's about how we express our love, our sympathy towards what humanity stands for, not only based on religion and ethnic group, but humanity by itself has to be healed moving forward. So even when I have conversation with so many young children, even myself, I came from 4 tribes of Ethiopia, and that always fascinates me, where I belong. You know, I never even talk about the tribes where my parents and my foreparents came from, and not to mix up my children. You know, my children, my children who are born here innocently don't even know or don't even realize what is going on. We were speaking about even yesterday. Someone told my daughter that the war is over, and then she came, "Daddy, was there any war in Ethiopia?"
Funny and sad, yeah.
Yeah, it's really sad. But someone outside of my family mentioned to her, you know, with this social media thing, and she came to ask me those questions. So even the innocents are getting involved in this very desperate political movement that is trying to ruin who we are. Remember, Christ came from a Jewish family, but he taught us a principle of Christianity. You know, when we speak about who we are as a Christian, we never go back and say, "Oh, we used to be Jew." No, we are Christian. We live as a Christian, and then we live by the principle of Christianity. Christianity is established based on 4 letters: love. That is the ultimate word that we can use. You know, people will always ask me, how do you tell a person who is very hurt in so many things, how do you tell them to ease up? I always start with those 4 letters: love. It's difficult, I know, the process takes a lot, but the beginning is those 4 letters: love. Love conquers everything. You know, we are based on love. And then, as you all know, who love is. Love is Christ, and love is God, and God is love. That is where the healing will start for all of us, I would say.
Very well said. ቃሎት ያሰማልን Father ሊቀ ብርሃናት. I wouldn't add any more to that. ቃሎት ያሰማልን. Diakon Enoch, with that answer, is there such thing with Ethiopian history? I know you study a lot of Ethiopian history. Is there such thing as belonging to only one ethnicity group? Or you could also personally answer your own story as well. Do we belong to one ethnicity group?
No, the simple answer is no. You know, a lot of people, it's hard when people are being killed for this reason, right? And this is the whole issue with race. And there's this English word, we use the technical term called reifying or reification. And so there have been a million different theories about what race is.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those people thought they were scientists and they thought they were using science. And as more and more time goes by, each one of those theories has been proven wrong or has been shown not to have enough sufficient evidence. The most recent science, quote unquote, of all the science was that there were 3 races: Negroid, Mongoloid, and Caucoid or Caucasian.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's loosely European, African, and Asian, and everything else was a mix, like people in the Middle East and people who are Native Americans. But again, over time, it was shown that these categories were very poor indicators of anything other than themselves. And so for the most part, most intelligent people have thrown those away, although some people grasp it, and there are other people trying to say, no, there's some science behind it, and they're trying to prove it. In our case, in Ethiopia, I'll just give you, a personal example, my own. My 4 grandparents are from historic Gondar and Shoa. 3 of them are Shoans. Of the Shoans, 2 of them have some part of them that are Oromo background, but the vast majority are Amharic. The one from Gondar has family in the disputed area of Walqait, Agade, Salam, Humara, Maikadra, which you mentioned at the top, as well as distant family from Makala itself and Hantalo and from Gwajam. So, where do you categorize someone like that? It's almost impossible. And increasingly, as people move to Addis Ababa, the capital city, and then intermarry in the diaspora, these things are becoming increasingly meaningless, although there is kind of a larger theme there. To your point earlier of what do we do, especially for those of the church, I think drawing upon our common heritage and being curious about the things that are unique to each culture is what we can do. So, personally, I love learning from the traditional schools of Ziema or melody and reading and reciting of scriptures and liturgical rubrics in our church. Those are things we can do in common. So if someone is not from Tigray, they have the common legacy of everything ever written in Ge'ez. And so studying that common heritage. If someone is not from Tigray, they can ask the people questions. They could be curious and say, what type of unique foods do you have? What type of unique music do you have? What are words in your language? How do I say hello? How do I say kame alaha? Or little things here and there. So focusing on that which unites us and then showing a sort of curiosity, because especially during the Oromo protests, one of the big complaints that I heard the most often is that people would say that their names would be ridiculed and that people weren't curious about those cultures. You have someone like Haile Selassie, different accounts say he's between 50 and 75% biologically Oromo. But if you look at the culture he expressed, he didn't do any Oromo dance moves. He didn't have any Oromo music. Maybe he ate chachabsa from time to time. But the dominant culture that Emperor Haile Selassie expressed was that Aksumite culture, which is expressed in, Amharic and Ge'ez, and it's related to Tigray. So some people didn't feel that he represented Oromia because his cultural presentation was historically Aksumite. But biologically, he's very Oromo. And so, again, these identities are very complex, but just showing kind of maybe a curiosity, like maybe more people would have liked him if from time to time he would begin a speech by saying Akum Jurta or something like that. I mean, you see the current Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, he's a genius at this presentation. Whether you critique his other policies or not, when he goes to a group of Muslims, he quotes the Quran in Arabic. When he goes to a group of Oromo speakers, he speaks to them in Orominya. He spoke to the people of Makala and to the people of Eritrea in Tigrinya. He speaks to the nation in Amarinya. He goes and respectfully receives a kabba or a cape and the gospel or the wangel from the patriarchs of the Orthodox Church when he himself is not Orthodox. And so I think he's one of those prime examples we have of just showing a little bit of curiosity of people's unique aspects and cultures while still focusing on the main, as I think Adebabay Media does, on that which unites all of Ethiopia.
Beautiful.
Beautifully well said. I completely agree. Moving forward, Likabranat and Diakon Henok, one thing I want to say, actually, before moving forward, I was just thinking about this with what Diakon Henok you were saying as well. Like I told you guys, I was reaching out to a lot of both church and Facebook friends that I know that are from Tegaru that have been very worried about, being disconnected with their family. And then you have these medias that are fabricating a lot of lies. And of course, we can't say that all of them 100% is a lie or 100% is a true, especially during a wartime and when we don't have connection. But one mistake that most of us, even those that understand the cause, the horrific cause of TPLF, and understand that this operation is needed for Ethiopia to heal, one thing we lack to understand is we put everyone that went out to protest. It could be those last time when most went out to protest on behalf of OLF, or right now when most went out to protest on behalf of TPLF. We have this lack of understanding, or we generalize everybody that gets out there to be anti-Ethiopia or they're even TPLF supporters. This is false, and this is a narrative that we need to stop. We need to, as Lika Branat, I mean, you said it well when you talked about love. One thing we lack as a community, even unfortunately, even the new generation, is a lack of, instead of communicating with another, having a conversation like we're having right now, we usually have conversation on each other or against each other, or like even lack of even having a conversation. If we're politically wrong, I have to block you on Facebook, and you're automatically my enemy. We need to get out of this phase, and like I'm telling you online right now, live, that even those that went out in support of TPLF or in support of the protests that we've been seeing, they're not all there because they're protesting against Abiy or they're protesting against Debretsion, but they're there because they're disconnected with their family. They want the truth out of that, especially a lot of the children, a lot of the generation that were born, like in the generation of TPLF, like me and Diakonino Elias, and Father, I would say you as well. We like, this is the only system that we know, especially these kids that are like at home, that have been told, like, if we could only look at the Tigray region or some of the Oromia region, the only people or the only political system they know is either OLF or TPLF. It's as if it's their own. They look at it more than just a political party. This is one thing that we must also be close with these brothers and sisters and have a conversation. And one thing I want to say, Likabranat, these conversations that I've been having, some of them became positive, where we actually agreed on a lot of things and enlightened each other on things, where if the truth that I have, I would tell that person and that person would tell me, and a lot of things bonded us. And at the end of the day, first of all, that Ethiopia unit, and then adding to that, most importantly, that orthodoxy, even regardless of religion, that Ethiopia unit, if we have a discussion, should bring us together. Moving forward, I just wanted to put that out there. Let's talk about now coming to Yebeta Christiana, when we've talked about diaspora as a community, and then with what should the church role should be at this moment, because unfortunately I know this could be very hard for you to answer, Likabranat, and all of us, again, because of this long system in Ethiopia. If we're against each other politically, we must be against each other. We split our churches, we split our community based on ethnicity, and now it's again, it looks like, I don't want to say it, and I hope that will never happen and we won't see that, but it's happening, where we're being split again based on ethnicity. How can we heal that as a church, especially in the diaspora?
Well, emotion has to come down. First and foremost, there's nothing wrong being a sympathizer of TPLF or whatever party that you can support. That is your human liberty and dignity, to stand for what you stand for, what you believe for. There is nothing wrong with standing up for the party that you belong or that you believe, that adhere or even preach what you believe. So for those of the guys who have went out their way, emotionally and physically are hurt and tortured with what is going on in Ethiopia, specifically in Tigray region, there is nothing wrong with going out there. It's about being fair as a Christian when you try to denounce and then convey your message while you went out there. And it's not about, there's nothing wrong about praying for your grandmother, for your uncle. There's nothing wrong to express the worrisome that you feel while you are in America, because what is going on up there, because you don't have enough information. Look, if it wasn't for our humanity, what was waged on social media for those who are in diaspora, if the war was on Facebook, we would have killed each other. If Facebook, If Facebook was a war zone, everybody was throwing everything. Don't you agree with that? Everybody, among the priests, the ladies, I mean, the faithfuls, the mu'minan, everybody, the Orthodox, the Muslim, everybody, because it is what we have been preached, that someone is against you if he doesn't stand with you. That is not the case here when we preach and teach as an Orthodox priest and as an Orthodox person, and more importantly, as an Ethiopian. And so me, the priestess, those who went out their way to express their feelings about what is going on in Tigray, it is their own right. But in the same token, we need to understand the other side, because every story has two sides, right? It doesn't only have one side. So when we see those who are crying there, and then when we see those who are praying here, we have to come into center to realize what is worth for us to stand together. Those things or those times will pass over, but we as human beings, as an Orthodox, we need to come together so that when moving forward, to understand and to reconcile with whatever has been thrown to us. Even yesterday's news have been exposing so many things. I have watched so many things. As I've said, emotions are running high. When emotions are running high, we tend to do some, silly things, which we regret later on. So as an Orthodox, I urge everyone, as Saint Gabriel said, "Nikum babbahillawina." It's gonna rekkawala amlakina. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you. My mother would say a lot of times, when if you get very angry, just try to get out of that, either a room or environment, for 5 minutes before you do something that you regret for your entire life. And it's kind of like, that's what I was been reminded of, especially on Facebook. One thing we have to, by the way, most of these attacks that we see on Facebook are hiding behind fake accounts. Most of them, especially those that are viciously attacking one another. And most of us don't even know that. We say, oh, someone from this ethnicity just attacked me, and then we blame a whole ethnicity. So like Ligambranat, you said the words 3 times. We need that emotion to calm down. So very well said. Diakon Hinok, what has been your experience this very hard month, 3.5 weeks that we've just passed, as a minister in your church, and you also do a podcast on philosophy of arts and science? Have these conversations come up? How have you been handling it? And in the future, do you see hope for the youth, especially here in the diaspora, that have a lot of lack of what's going on? Because first of all, the news doesn't tell them, or we don't talk about it with them, or they don't even get the right information. So as a church and as ministers, as deacons and priests, like Ligabranat, how do we move forward?
Yeah, I'll be honest, my parish community and where we came from, thank God we've been reconciled now as a church for 2 years. But prior to then, the big issue was the TPLF. There's some gray area and a lot of disputed facts around what was the relationship between the 4th Patriarch of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, His Holiness Abba Merqorios, and the TPLF. Was he forced out at gunpoint, or did he willingly resign? Was his willing resignation pressured, or was it his free choice with informed consent? And there are a lot of people who have disputing facts about that. But that being where my church was for 20 plus years, was in favor of the fourth patriarch and against the TPLF, to be honest, a lot of the community that I serve, just to put my cards on the table, has been on that side. At the same time, I have never been a Burentenya. I've never been a partisan, in that I'm always interested in reconciliation. The Sermon on the Mount in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5 said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the heirs of God." I heard a hearsay, I don't know if it's true, but I hope someone will correct me if I'm wrong, that while the Prime Minister Abiy was on his way to Washington, D.C., when the synods were first meeting a couple of years ago, Abune Elias got up, and of course, they're all in their 70s and 80s, and he says, "We can't let this young man reconcile us. We're shmagluch, we're elders, so we need to reconcile ourselves." And so they reconciled themselves before he actually arrived. So I think the church's role in all of this is reconciliation. And as much as possible, from the elders down, from the sages and the elders to the littlest amongst us, we should be pushing forward acts of peacemaking and reconciliation and reaching out. And that's what I've tried to do. At the same time, that reconciliation cannot be based in fantasy. It must be based in fact. So for example, I know and have a lot of friends, some of them from Twitter and Facebook, some of the war zones, I mentioned earlier. And in those friendships, there are people who are promoting the Say No to War campaign and things like that. And there's truth there in that their family is in harm's way. And I don't want any harm to come to any of their family. And I'm with them all the way. But as I said, there are some foundational matters that are incongruent in how they're presenting it. For example, if all of those people were genuinely just trying to protect their family and didn't care at all about the political matter, say this is not about politics, it's just about my family, they would have suggested a peaceful surrender of the TPLF. And with all due respect to the Prime Minister and all the announcements being made, I'm not 100% sure everything is over right now, because I remember, I was a teenager, but I remember in 2003 when President George W. Bush announced a victory in Iraq, and the United States military is still in Iraq right now. That doesn't mean that it's going to be an elongated process like that. There are a lot of things that are different about the situation in Iraq and the situation in Ethiopia. But there is no one who can tell me with 100% certainty about the future how long the insurgency will continue. We hope that it's not going to continue for long, and we hope that as many civilians as possible, their lives and their dignity is respected, and we hope the federal government compensates the nearly 1 million people who've been displaced over this past 3.5 weeks to a month, as you mentioned. And we pray for, at the bare minimum, unity of the Orthodox Church, and of course, maximally, we hope for the unity of all of Ethiopia throughout these matters. And I, for one, with whatever little power I have in my corners of the world, with my connections online, will try to embody that spirit of reconciliation as much as I humanly can by the grace of God.
Amen.
Very well said. Well said. I'll give the last word for, again, Diakon Henok, and then we'll have the last blessing with Liga Branat, and we'll end today's great conversation. And of course, we'll continue in the future. Again, back to you, Diakon Henok. Last word.
Thank you. Just to throw a monkey wrench in the situation, as we look forward to the future, I want to remind you all something that I said last time, and that is a lot of these problems stem not only from 1994 and 1995 or 1991, but from 1974 when communism took over. Yeah. And I often make a lot of anti-communist statements, and I make that without being ashamed or embarrassed in any moment, because one of the things we have to grapple with in our nation going forward is, are we going to just look at the future and establish everything off the future, or is there anything valuable in the past? There have been other commentators online who have talked about how there's never been any genuine democratic processes in Ethiopia during the past two regimes. But ironically and counterintuitively, there was a successful parliament with democratic processes during the time of the monarchy. Now, the truth behind that is that people didn't get to vote on the executive, which is the monarch. What they did get to vote on was local, regional things. And so, without making any bold claims or suggestions, I would just suggest people study again, as always, Ethiopian history, see the processes. Even those who are pro-democracy should study what democratic processes existed before 1974, because I'll tell you that number was not zero. And so I'll encourage people to do that.
Thank you so much, Diakon Henok. Lika Brahanat, before closing with your blessing, I just want to say my last word. Again, thank you so much, both Lika Brahanat and Diakon Henok Elias, for always coming when we ask to have this very important conversation that we need to start igniting everywhere, and especially starting from our homes and family. Thank you for always coming and sharing your intellect with us. Brothers and sisters, the reason that we do these kind of conversations in Adebabay Media, and the core idea of Adebabay Media is to heal that nation that we all adore and love. We are across the nation, and most of us either were born here or grew up here, but that Ethiopiawinat that most of you, our parents, have given us still ignites in our hearts. So it is very important that we carefully heal each other at this moment, and it starts with conversating at home, teaching our kids what's going on, the history of what's going on. And even though like, why is he telling us not to teach our kids about hate and love? That's of course that's normal. Unfortunately, the world that we live in right now, especially with this Zeranyinnet, just like COVID comes and attacks us out of nowhere, it's inside of us, and we need that healing in all ethnicity. And just because one regime that has been there for 30 years just became history, it doesn't mean that we've healed. It means that we've actually should start the process of healing, where we should learn to teach our kids not to judge one another, not to put everyone into a box of generalizing everybody into one box and then hating on them, whether it's on social media or in person. Reaching out to those that we think have a different idea than us, even though ethnic-based politics is not an idea. Once we start having that conversation, we will eventually get to those, like being different in ideas, just like we see in the United States, where Democrats and Republicans have different ideas, but at the end of the day, it's for their pledges for the nation. But all these things starts when we conversate one another, when we learn about our country, more than just adhering our beautiful culture, or the food, or just holding our flags, but actually learning about this rich Ethiopiawinat that we have. And it starts from home. It starts from conversating. It starts from reaching out to someone that you think have a different idea than you, but I guarantee you, it might not be at 100% of the time, but mostly you will get to a point that you understand each other, because at the end of the day, we're all humanity, even greater than Ethiopia. We're all humans, part of the same community of this world. Lika Brahanat, with that said, I'll go to you, Father, for your last word and blessing.
I appreciate the time, and I enjoyed the conversation. Most importantly, I love the platform that we are reaching out to create a common union with everyone. The common union in our church is called communion. The Greek word I believe it says koinonia, which makes sense, that we understand the common union of the intimate kind of relationship that we need to have with our Creator, in our case, God. So that common union brings us into the position that we kind of strive for that great achievement in empowering ourselves with the Word of God. The Word of God reveals God Himself, and then it brings us the relationship that we should always have as a Christian, no matter what the different opinion that we have, even we learn to have, because opinions are opinions, but facts are facts. The fact of the matter is God is who is sovereigning our country. So we need to focus on that so that we can come to the word that Diakon Henok used in terms of the term that he used, reconciliation. Reconciliation starts with the conversation that we should have with ourselves first. We need to reconcile ourselves as an individual so that we can go to reconcile with our brothers and sisters. After we all do that, and the reconciliation that we need to have that common union with God will flourish, and then it will be revealed. So it doesn't mean that there was a guilty party. It doesn't mean that there was a good party here. There were some facts that brothers and sisters have killed with each other. What we have lost in Mekelle or in Tigray belongs to Christ. What we have lost from our Mekalakia, those are brothers and sisters in Christ. Most importantly, they are Ethiopian. So let's focus on what unites us instead of what dividing us. I urge everyone to calm down. I know those who felt neglected, who felt ridiculed, who have said things that they regret from the months down to the lay faithful. They have said so many things that they will regret. I'm not going to mention and on this platform that we have heard it all. We have said it. We have heard it. We have seen it. But we are not going to bring those things to get reconciled. We have to let go and then let God do the talking, the conversation. Because ultimately, unless we give ourselves into God, it just doesn't seem right, and it just doesn't seem good. So I urge everybody that to please be prayerful, be faithful, and be hopeful that Ethiopia stretch on to God, and God will lift Ethiopia up into the position where Ethiopia should be. And as a father, as a husband, as a priest, I urge every Ethiopian who have said so many things against Ethiopianism or against the country, or even people who have said so many things against the parties and everything, let's come down and focus and build a bridge that will lead us into the phenomenal country that we strive to have. I would say thank you. But I thank everyone, especially Henok. You amazed me so much time. And the first time I met you in Houston, that was an eye-opening to know you, the thing that you do, and the love that you have for Ethiopia, Ethiopian Orthodox, and even Ethiopia, for the youth, whether they are Eritrean, Ethiopian, as an Orthodox priest, as a proud an Orthodox priest. I am blessed to see, and then I'm hopeful to see you guys, taking over the torch to flourish the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, not only in diaspora, but back home in Ethiopia. Thank you.
Thank you for your wisdom and for your blessing. May your blessing be upon us, Lik Abrahanat. We feel the same way Father, about you, and Diakon Elias, I adhere to everything that Lika Branat had said. Again, thank you so much for always coming and sharing your wisdom with us, and we'll continue this conversation, brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for being with us throughout this time. You could still, we are done with the program, but you could share it with others and continue this conversation until we all heal. This is our new time, but today we've run 1 hour forward, but every Sunday, stay tuned for Viewers Digest at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and is it 4 p.m. Pacific Time? That's our new time for Sundays. We have another great discussion and program for you set for next Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time or 6 p.m. Central Time, and 4 p.m. Pacific Time. Again, thank you so much for being with us. Good night, everybody.